The SEC basketball tournament will be played this week, and it will be a test of whether anyone in this deep conference can stop Florida. The SEC will qualify probably 10 or 11 teams for the NCAA tournament. It's a deep league, but at the top, the Gators have been dominant as they pursue to repeat as national champions. Well, first up is the conference tournament. We will discuss that today on this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered, a basketball edition, our podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. John, we are getting into hoops mode for about the next month. And as we look at the SEC, conference has been pretty interesting this year because it stands to qualify more bids than any other conference. And yet, it's also not as good as the league was last year. Of course, the league was historically great last year, set a record with the number of teams qualified. Florida won the NCAA tournament. Going into the tournament, as you recall, there were like 4 different teams from the SEC, Florida, Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee, that were all like serious Final Four contenders. And then Florida won the whole thing. As you compare the league this year to last year, what's your assessment?
I think if last year hadn't happened, everybody would be talking about this could be the best league, the best SEC basketball ever.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as you said, 10 or 11 teams. If not for that historic season of last year, and nobody's ever matched that. And I'm not sure anybody conference will match that. Of course, the way these leagues keep adding teams, you get to 30-team leagues, you might slip some more in there, but no, that was a great year. One thing I've noticed, though, Blake, about this year, although you don't look at these teams and see as maybe as many possible national championship contenders, certainly Florida is, there might be even more star power. There are 7 players projected to go in the first round of the NBA draft. 5 were taken last year. So I think that's significant. My point, I guess, is there's a lot of star power in this tournament, and that will make it more watchable. I'm looking forward to the tournament, even though I don't think there's a lot of it's not as though that many teams that aren't already in look capable of playing their way in. It's possible, but I think unlikely.
John, what did you make of the controversy last week between Bruce Pearl and Miami, Ohio? Bruce Pearl, the retired Auburn coach, now an analyst for the TNT studio, was critiquing the resume of Miami, Ohio, which is 31-0, unbeaten from the mid-major ranks, hasn't played a very tough schedule. Miami, Ohio tried to schedule some Power 4 teams. They were unsuccessful in getting them scheduled. A lot of Power 4 teams see no benefit in playing these mid-major teams. So Miami, Ohio's schedule is not very tough, but they beat everybody that they've played, 31-0. Bruce Pearl said that if Miami of Ohio does not win its conference tournament, loses even one game, that he doesn't think they should be an NCAA tournament team. And then he went on to stump, coincidence? He went on to stump for Auburn, the team that employed him as coach for several years. Now he works as an ambassador and a special advisor to the athletic director at Auburn, so he's still drawing a paycheck from Auburn. And oh, by the way, his son, Stephen Pearl, coaches Auburn. Auburn is a bubble team at 16-15. Auburn's lost 8 of its last 10, but Pearl was stumping for Auburn at the expense of 31-0 Miami, Ohio. I was curious your take on that controversy.
Well, first off, that reminds me, how do you go about getting a job as an ambassador and consultant? I mean, does USA Today Network offer that kind of position? Because
I wish they did. Sounds like great work.
Well, quite frankly, I'd be interested in it only if we could continue our podcast with me in that different role, of course. No, I was shocked by those comments because Bruce is so introverted and such a shy guy. I just didn't expect that from him. No, seriously. I mean, Bruce is a great promoter, and that's right in his wheelhouse. The way he managed his departure from Auburn, his retirement or resignation, and then the timing was just right where well, who you're going to get? And Bruce can just say, how about that guy over there?
Yeah, my son.
My son. Yeah. Too bad he couldn't have pulled this off on Father's Day. It would have been a nice touch, but yeah. So
yeah, Bruce just so happened to decide he wanted to retire 6 weeks before the season started. So he set it up to where basically Auburn had no choice but to promote his son from within, because who else are you going to get 6 weeks before the season started? And one thing I will appreciate about Bruce, I thought he was a little disingenuous here attacking Miami of Ohio, because he acted like he wasn't biased in this in any way. He said, "This is my objective opinion." No, Bruce, you can't possibly be objective in this situation because you're drawing a paycheck from Auburn and your son coaches Auburn. And he went on to say that he's rooting for his son to get into the NCAA tournament, thereby rendering him unobjective. But what I did appreciate, at least about Bruce, was that he just openly admitted, yes, there was nepotism at play in his son getting the Auburn job. It's like, well, at least you admitted that part, Bruce.
well, yeah, that really was the bigger issue. I just think I like it when he says objective opinion, which is kind of an oxymoron. An opinion is usually subjective, but I don't think Bruce would have I don't recall his taking the same approach years ago when he was a coach at Milwaukee. I don't remember. So, well, a team like ours that isn't in a major conference, isn't playing. Well, we didn't even call them Power Four conference teams back then, but we don't play with the big boys, and we probably have no business being in the NCAA tournament unless we win our tournament. And we'd probably be better suited for the NIT. He didn't say that. And I know he was grateful to get into the tournament, and that led to his being hired at Tennessee, where he continued to make the NCAA tournament every year for 6 years.
I want to spin it back toward Florida, John. Now that we've addressed Bruce and his drama, if we wait very long, Bruce will say something else inflammatory, and we can have a whole nother episode on Bruce Pearl's latest controversy. But moving back to Florida, Florida has been starved for football success for several years now. You go back to Dan Mullen's final season, that was a bust. And then the entire Billy Napier era was a bust. So it's really been 5 years running since Florida was particularly relevant in football. I mean, generally speaking, we would consider Florida a football school, even though in actuality, it's a very good athletic department historically across the board, dating back to when Jeremy Foley was athletic director, kind of built Florida into an everything school. And obviously, Billy Donovan had great success there on the basketball front, winning a couple national championships. And now we see Florida football down, and Todd Golden and that basketball program are just humming. I mean, for all the attention that Duke and Michigan and Arizona have gotten in college basketball this season, John, I really feel like Florida's flying below the radar a little bit as a national championship contender. I think it's 4 teams that are the headliners. And sometimes it seems like, at least in the national debate, it's only 3 teams that get talked about: Duke, Michigan, and Arizona. But as you consider sort of the trajectory of Florida, is it too much? You might laugh at this. Feel free to. Is it too much to say Florida's a basketball school now? I mean, if Indiana can be a football school, can Florida be a basketball school?
I think when you're hoisting up a trophy at the end of a season, you're that kind of school. Florida did that last year. Look at it this way, too. Look at the procession of football coaches we've had at Florida in recent years. The Jim McElwains, Will Muschamps, Dan Mullen, and more recently, Sunbelt Billy Napier. All those guys. And then pretty mediocre. They go out and get Todd Golden, who now is just, he looks like a future Hall of Fame coach. Did such a great job managing that team last year through the NCAA tournament, won all those close games. And now he comes back, prepared the Gators with a really difficult non-conference schedule. And the team has continued to get better and better and better. And it looks like it could be capable of repeating as hard as that is. So it's funny, isn't it, that you go back and Billy Donovan won back-to-back titles there at Florida. Um, you could say that Florida's done a better job of hiring coaches. Now, does that win over fans by hiring better basketball coaches? I, I I don't know, but it's got a fairly small arena by SEC standards. But I can remember those great teams didn't draw that great. And I was there in Jacksonville as a columnist in the mid 80s. Norm Sloan was the coach. Florida had some good teams, not championship caliber teams, but good teams. And there would be a considerable number of empty seats in the O'Connell Center watching those teams. So, but this team is so good and it's fun to watch. I think that's a fair statement because look at how mediocre the Gators have been in football.
Well, and that's just it, John. And you mentioned something important there. When you're holding up the big trophy at the end of the season, that makes you at that school, whatever sport that was, whether it was basketball, football, whatever, within reason, right? I mean, not a basket weaving school. I don't know that you're going to.
Is that still offered in college? Is that still available?
Oh, I think it's offered more than ever. All these ninth year seniors, it's like, what class are you taking? Well, basket weaving, and then I'll head out to the driving range after that and see if I can get an A in driving a golf ball.
Or in Carson's bet case, you just say classes.
And what are those?
What classes?
Yeah. Well, but he was trying. He was working very hard at his craft online, John. Online.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. But no, you make a great point. If you're winning in a sport, that makes you relevant. That's the sport that matters all of a sudden. Now, it doesn't mean that the other one never will again. But I think if Florida was successful at football and they were winning men's basketball championships, then maybe you would laugh at this idea of them being a basketball school. But when you've been bad in the other sport, it does swing it a little bit. I mean, I look at Indiana. Indiana, we would always consider it as a basketball school. But when was the last time Indiana was particularly relevant in March Madness? Right? I mean, they flirt around with the tournament, kind of on the bubble every year. Sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. But, when was the last time we thought, Indiana could win the whole thing? I mean, you got to go back to when Mike Davis was coach?
Yeah, but even when Mike Davis was coaching, I didn't look at Indiana and say, boy, that's a probable national champion. I think you really have to go back to Bobby Knight.
I mean, they were the runner-up one year under Mike Davis, but
yeah, I know. But in terms of winning a championship, and when I know they were runner-up once, but you didn't think of Indiana basketball under Bobby Knight. You thought of it as a dynasty. Part of that had to do with Knight's personality, certainly. And, but, that, and I don't know, I wonder how much that contributed to the popularity of Indiana's basketball, having such a high profile, controversial coach.
Yeah, I think a lot. I think it's a basketball state anyway. I mean, just by nature, even going into high school, it's a basketball state. But then you get starved for basketball success. Like I said, year after year, they're like this bubble team, and your football program comes out of nowhere and wins a national championship. I mean, those fans, I saw it firsthand throughout the playoff run, covering Indiana to their run to the national championship. I mean, you'd go to particularly that Peach Bowl. I mean, it was 90% Indiana fans in the stands. Now, I know Oregon fans had to come a long way, but I mean, that was a 90-10 crowd, 90% Indiana fans. I went out to a bar the night before the game, watched the Ole Miss Miami game. There literally wasn't one Oregon fan in the whole bar. It was just all Indiana fans. And so they were all in on that football team. And, I don't know if Florida's the same way about basketball, but they have been selling out this season, selling out the arena. Like you said, not one of the biggest arenas in college basketball, just about 10, 11,000 capacity. But you get the right coach and you win enough games. And, yeah, I don't know that it will be long-term a basketball school, but I think it's not totally hyperbolic to say in this moment that Florida has become a basketball school.
No, I don't think it is. It's not an overstatement at all. Again, when you have that kind of success at the national level, why wouldn't you attain such stature? And again, you look at the coaches in football. None of these coaches, once you got past Urban Meyer, and of course you had Steve Spurrier back in the 90s, early 2000s, none of those coaches really excited the fan base. There just wasn't a lot of pizzazz with the program. And now with basketball, I think it's one thing to win, but when you win the way Florida did in last March, you have a star player like Walter Clayton running the show. I mean, this is what March Madness basketball is such a big deal in March. Maybe not so much the other 11 months, but in March, it gets everybody's attention. And all of a sudden, you're on the biggest stage and you're not really thinking, oh, we're a football school, because you're winning the kind of games that make that tournament so famous. And remember, going back to last year in that tournament, it wasn't as though Florida was doing a Connecticut and just roaring past everybody. It came from behind in those games, and that builds an image too. Yeah, dominance is great, but also clutch. To be able to win the way Florida won in the biggest moments, to be the biggest team in the sport. I mean, that'll get you some fans. That will, and I wonder, in the state of Florida now, people that maybe didn't consider themselves Florida fans in any sport now are pulling for the Gators.
I think it's a top 5 job in the SEC. I mean, Todd Golden's made it look like the best job in the SEC. If he were to leave, I don't think I would call it the best job in the SEC, but I think Florida is a top 5 basketball job in this conference. Kentucky's in there. Arkansas, I think, is in there. Tennessee, probably somewhere in that top 5. I would have Florida as a top 5 job in the SEC, certainly.
Yeah. I wonder if how many Kentucky fans are thinking, why didn't we hire Todd Golden?
Oh.
Remember, it tried to get Billy Donovan when he was at Florida. So why not? I mean, because that Kentucky is very definitely a basketball school. Maybe Will Stein can change that, the new football coach. But yeah, you know how Kentucky fans, how envious they must be of what Florida has done in the sport, because you go back to those Donovan teams when they went back to back and were just great teams, and great teams that were at their best in the biggest moments. And now you have Florida doing it just for 1 year, but in the tournament. But you put these 2 years back to back, and it's pretty impressive.
And of course, Florida just beat Kentucky to round out the regular season going into the SEC tournament. Florida has now won 11 in a row, and that's why I say I put them as a national championship contender on a very similar level as I do Duke, Michigan, and Arizona. I really don't see – I see a bigger gap between those 4 and the other teams than I do between the top 3 and Florida, because I do think, you know, for a while it had seemed like Duke, Michigan, and Arizona had separated themselves, but I think Florida has caught up. I really think it's a quartet at this point and not just a trio, and I would expect those 4 teams to be the 4 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament, almost regardless of what happens conference championship week. But speaking of the conference tournament, John, so of course Florida's the 1 seed. The other teams getting the buys into the quarterfinals are 2 seed Alabama, number 3 seed Arkansas, and number 4 seed Vanderbilt. Whether it be one of those 3 teams or somebody else, I'm curious who you think is the biggest threat to Florida in the conference tournament this week.
The way Florida's playing, it's hard to pinpoint a big threat. You almost have to go outside the SEC. I wonder about Tennessee, though, which lost to Florida during the regular season. Nate Ament's status is uncertain, but if he can play in the tournament, Tennessee is one of the few teams that can match Florida on the boards. Tennessee can get in there and compete with Florida's fabulous front line, and that is very hard to do. Tennessee's got some depth there too. So if Nate Amend's healthy, I'm not saying I would pick Tennessee as the favorite if Florida was out of the picture, but in a matchup against Florida, I just think Tennessee might have a better chance than anybody else. I don't know whom else I would pick other than Tennessee.
What do you think about Vanderbilt? Because that's a team I am continually drawn to. They can score a lot as Florida can. I think you need to be able to score if you're going to challenge Florida. You mentioned defense, rebounding, all those things, but I like teams that can score. And we just saw it from Vanderbilt against Tennessee. They hung 86 on Tennessee in a win. They scored 89 recently in a win against Ole Miss. Now, that Vanderbilt's been a little bit up and down lately. They've won their past couple, but before that, it was a little bit rough sledding. I really like Tyler Tanner, the sophomore guard. I know you do too. You give Vanderbilt much chance. They would be on a collision course with Florida potentially in the semifinals if both teams were to make it that far. And they gave Florida a really good game earlier this season.
I've been very impressed with Vanderbilt. Going into this season, I didn't think of it as having this level of talent, but it's really good. Tyler Tanner's probably the most improved player in the country. He's gone from sort of a backup player to a starring role. And I was so impressed with how it played against Tennessee. Even though Ament couldn't play in that game, he was out with an injured ankle. I really thought Tennessee would just absolutely dominate the rebounding against Vanderbilt. But Vanderbilt held its own, and especially in the first half, it more than held its own. And I thought that was very significant because I think of Vanderbilt as more of a perimeter team. Mm-hmm. It's got multiple three-point shooters, guys that can get to the basket, but I just don't know if it can match up with the likes of Florida in that front line. However, it did that well enough against Tennessee. And Florida, Vanderbilt would have in terms of three-point shooting, it would have an advantage against the Gators as it did against Tennessee. So, yeah, that's not a better choice. I'm trying to think. Alabama doesn't I'm not that attracted to Alabama because it's so three-point reliant. However, I guess that would be a way to beat Florida. If Alabama on its very best day, it goes out and makes 13 three-pointers, yeah, it could pull off an upset. But I also could see Florida manhandling Alabama.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Alabama so desperately needed a big man. That's why they went and got a former NBA G Leaguer until the judge told them that they could not.
Yeah, that Alabama needs to get more pros out there. What do you think of Arkansas? It's had a very good season. It's got two great freshman players.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how I feel about Arkansas in the tournament.
In the tournament. Yeah, a chance of
yeah, I don't know how I feel about him in the conference tournament. On the whole, though, I am pretty attracted to this Arkansas team because the thing when John Calipari was at Kentucky, he got sucked in by all those freshmen, right? And he would even admit it. He'd say, I could sign all these McDonald's All-Americans, all these five-star guys. Am I not supposed to sign these guys? You know? And it was almost like a woe is me. What am I supposed to do here? Not sign the star freshman. But what I like here about this team is I feel like they have a pretty healthy mix. They've got the star youngsters, but they've got a couple, older guys as well. And so it's not just, five-star diaper dandies. They've got a couple other guys that have been around for a minute. So I do like that about them in that they got a couple seniors in the mix with the freshmen. And so to me, this is like a Sweet 16 type of team. I don't think they're a Final Four type of team. I don't know that I like them to win the conference tournament, but I think it could be a Sweet 16 type of team. And in fact, I like Arkansas's chances of going to the Sweet 16 or beyond more than I like Kentucky's. And what drama that would be if Calipari and Arkansas go deeper in the tournament this year than what Mark Pope and Kentucky would. Last year, they both reached the same stage, right? Both teams made the Sweet 16, so it was sort of a draw in year one of that comparison. And maybe that's unfair to do, but that's how it's going to play out, John. As long as Calipari's at Arkansas,
Sure.
Mark Pope is going to consistently be compared to him.
I think for an optimal viewing scenario, would have Kentucky and Arkansas meeting in the tournament with maybe an Elite Eight berth on the line. The thing about this Art Calipari team, he just had so many stars at Kentucky, players who excelled in the NBA more so than in college. It's just all these great scorers, but the parts never really fit together that well at Kentucky with a collection of all stars. This Arkansas team has some stars. Darius Acuff's the best player in the SEC, in my opinion.
I agree.
But it's also got some role players, clearly defined roles for Arkansas players, and I think that can be helpful. But in Darius Acuff, I think it's also helpful to have one player who can take over a game. I mentioned Walter Clayton of Florida last year. I mean, that's what he did. And playing in a tournament, it really helps to have a player like that who's at his very best when you need him to be at his best. And I just love watching Acuff. He's the first SEC player to lead the league in points and assists per game since Pete Maravich way back in 69, 70. So that's quite a testament to how good he is. So, yeah, but I think you're right. I think Arkansas would have a better shot. I don't like it against Florida, even though it's talented. I don't like that matchup. But I think in a tournament, NCAA tournament, I think it could progress nicely.
Yeah, they could get hot. Let me ask you this, John. If you were, let's say you're the athletic director of a Power 4 school, and you had a head coach opening at your basketball coach, and you had a chance to get either Mark Pope or John Calipari for the next 5 years, and you were told up front, they just said, you know what, I'm done in 5 years. You could have either one of them, though. Which one would you hire?
It sounds like a trick question, since when you look at Calipari, one of the all-time winningest coaches, but he didn't do what I thought he would do when he was at Kentucky. Won one national championship. I thought he would win multiple championships. The thing about Calipari, though, he's a player magnet. Doesn't matter where he is. So 5 more years. I really like Mark Pope in his first season at Kentucky. Not as much this year. I guess I'd have to say Calipari. Who would you say?
I'd say Calipari without hesitation. Yeah. And I agree with you. He didn't. I think Kentucky fans were very understandably frustrated with him at the end of his tenure. I understand all of it. Sometimes we kind of needle fans, poke at fans for, unrealistic reactions or expectations. Not that we don't love those. We find them wildly entertaining, of course, but sometimes fans can be over the top. I didn't think Kentucky fans were over the top at the end. I thought they were understandably frustrated and disappointed that Cal's teams kept kind of burning out in the NCAA tournament. They'd have these nice seasons, and then the last few years on the big stage, he flamed out. He didn't really, I mentioned, he really didn't adjust to the transfer portal. He kept getting all these freshmen. And so I understand why Kentucky fans were frustrated with him at the end before he left to Arkansas. But if I'm just, the AD of a generic program and I got the chance to get 5 years out of Calipari or 5 years out of Mark Pope, to me, it's no brainer. I want Calipari. I haven't seen anything out of Mark Pope that tells me he's a better basketball coach than John Calipari. Forget the in-game stuff. Most of this is still about in attracting talent, is it not? And Calipari is excellent at that. Now, would I like him to take another transfer or two at times? Sure. Maybe I could convince him to do that. But overall, to me, it's a no-brainer.
In a way, what he could do with at Kentucky was fool's gold. As you pointed out, he had access to everybody. He can get the very elite players. And that really played to the instincts of Kentucky fans. They're so basketball oriented, and they see those stars by the names of recruits. That's what they want to see. I think they much more enjoyed recruiting season than they did basketball season.
Especially the final few years they did.
Or
Yeah.
I just think when he was able to, I mean, he just dazzled them going out and getting all these 5 stars. And the irony being that great high school players, not so great at Kentucky, and then become great NBA players. It's as though the low part of their career was achieved at Kentucky before fans where it mattered more than anywhere else. So that was unfortunate, but I think he should have learned something from that, that just because you can get collect an all-star team, that may not be the best route to a national championship.
May not be, although I would rather be in the position Arkansas is in on the recruiting trail right now. They have 3 5-stars headed to Arkansas next season. You know how many 5-stars are headed to Kentucky, John? Well, none, because they don't have any high school players committed. Period. Their high school recruiting class is 0 at Kentucky under Mark Pope right now. Imagine that. I mean, that's just wild to think about it. And so much of this sport, I get it, is transfers, although this season has been dominated by star freshmen, not just at Arkansas, but beyond across the country. We're seeing this is the year of the freshmen. But by and large, it helps if you can get those older, experienced guys. They help you in March, and maybe that'll be Kentucky's plan here once the portal opens. But I'd rather be sitting in the clubhouse with 3 5-star recruits on the way, and then I got to supplement a little bit through the portal versus the portal opens and you have nobody in your recruiting class at that point. But
when you have access to that kind of talent, regardless of whether you go portal or go high school recruiting, I think what defines the approach you take is what you how will this all fit together? If you think what works in terms of continuity and how these guys would play together. I think you have to have very well defined roles when you go about your recruiting, because Mark Pope's going to be able to get good players in the portal. Can he get the right good players? That's the question. We keep talking about Kentucky. This is the SEC tournament is one that Kentucky has owned for many years. Its fans represent there like no other fan base, and they will swarm Nashville. They're all about it. And some have a better chance of seeing Kentucky play in that tournament than they do during the regular season.
Sure.
So, yeah. I mean, Rupp Arena is sold out forever, I would assume. So it will have the crowd support, and it usually plays well in that tournament. There's nothing I've seen with this team. It's had some good moments, some not so good moments. It's hard for me to think of it as being good enough to challenge Florida. It could pull off an upset, but I don't know if it can if it could beat Florida.
And it's got a long ways to go too, because Kentucky is seeded number 9 in this tournament. So they're gonna be playing day after day after day if they're gonna reach the finish line. And they've not been playing well recently, losers of 5 of their last 7 games. John, let's flip the page toward March Madness, and there'll be plenty more to discuss on that after Selection Sunday. We'll dedicate next week's episode to March Madness. But in the larger sense, one of the bigger narratives around college basketball is if and when the tournament is going to expand. We've been hearing rumblings about this for a few years now, and it seems like this could be the final year of the 68-team tournament, which I think is a real shame. According to the latest reporting on this, the numbers being discussed, if the tournament does expand, would be either going to 72 or even 78 teams, which would increase the what is now known as the first four. If it's a 76 team tournament, it would become the first 12. There would be 12 opening round games before you get to the 64 team bracket. I don't think there's much appetite for this in the fan ranks. I don't think fans are clamoring for more play-in games. I think most fans see the tournament as starting, for all intents and purposes, on Thursday. You know, your bracket pools generally start on Thursday. They're not counting those play-in games in your bracket pools. I don't think most bracket pools would count the play-in games, even if there were 12 of them, because that only leaves people about 36 hours to get their bracket in. And, you know, a lot of people actually have real jobs they have to do, and not like us. So, but I'm curious your thoughts on the talk of NCAA tournament expansion. Would you like to see it stay at 68? What do you think of 72, 76 teams? How much of an abomination would that be? Or are you in the minority who think that would be a great idea to expand the tournament?
I abhor the playing games. It's like, well, you're sort of in the tournament, but not quite. So go prove it that you belong in this tournament and we'll take you. You can have a seat at the table. Well, no, not a seat. You can stand at the table and maybe prove yourself worthy, and you can get a seat next time. But I really don't like that. I tell you what, given a choice, I'd rather go to 128 teams than to go to, say, 76.
Just add a full extra round rather than all these playing games. Yeah.
Yeah. But we know the way this goes. It's more is better, however you want to shape it in what form. More is that's the way we go now. But I've covered play-in games. I want it to begin on that Thursday. That's one of my favorite days in sports, is that Thursday when that tournament kicks off.
Absolutely.
And I don't even watch the play-in games most of the time.
I don't blame you. I'm curious, John, as someone who traveled the world covering the greatest sporting events across the globe, you had your own slush fund travel budget for many years. How in the world did you assign yourself to cover play-in games in Dayton? How did that come up on your dance card?
Well, see, we didn't have play-in games when I had that unlimited budget, would travel hither, there, and yon. So, yeah, I would pick a tournament. If there was a team that I wasn't covering, I mean, I would just pick a region, and that looks good. Usually it would be one that's more accessible, but not always.
Okay, but you never covered the play-in games in Dayton then?
No, I did. No. Well, yeah, I guess I did one time with Tennessee, maybe. Yeah. I think I did.
Okay.
I've already forgotten it. It was that forgettable.
You can't remember whether you did or didn't cover play-in games in Dayton.
It's like a pseudo tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not quite real. But you know what I'm talking about? I mean, you go there, it's always been that magical Thursday where everything begins, and that's the best day. And those early scores start coming in, and you think, ooh, some number 12 seeds up 13-4 on a 5th seed, and you get that upset fever. You just don't get that with play-in games. I never can remember what seed they are.
Yeah, they're a joke, and I think it's a joke, the idea that we're going to go from 4 play-in games to 12 play-in games. Of course, they won't officially call them play-in games. They'll come up with some stupid name that nobody believes. The common person is going to see them for what they are, play-in games. And I think what I dislike the most about this talk of expansion, John, is not the watering it down with more at-large teams, teams that are 17-14 or 16-15. I don't love that, but that's not even what I like least about tournament expansion. What I like even less than that is these mid-major teams that win their conference tournament, and they should be in the stinking thing. They've done everything you've asked them to do. They win their conference tournament. They get the auto bid. If you go to 76 teams, you're going to have more and more of those mid and low major teams that just got an auto bid into the tournament. But, oh, by the way, you don't actually get to play in the big tournament. You have to now win a play-in game to even get in the 64-team field. And so you're going to have The bottom line is there are going to be fewer mid and low majors in the first round than there are now because more of them are going to get weeded out in the play-in games by having to go head-to-head with one another. They're going to schedule these teams that win their conference tournaments, not all of them, but several of them are going to get going head-to-head in a play-in game to be like the 14 seed. And I just think that's wrong. You win your conference tournament, I think you should be in and not have to be playing in these play-in games to get in it, because that's what we love about that's part of what we love about the first round are the mid-major teams and the low-major teams pulling off the upsets. You start weeding them out in the play-in games, and you're really going to change how we all see this tournament.
Yeah, it's like you bring them in and you say you can bring them into a restaurant and say you can order appetizers, a soup and salad, but no, not the entrees are off limits tonight.
Yeah, Power Four gets the steak.
Check back with us. Check back with us later.
Yeah. That's what really rankles me. You want to expand the tournament? Make all the play-in games those last teams in. All the play-in games have to be the at-large teams. You know, the final at-large teams. I say if you win your conference tournament, you should be safe from the play-in games. That would be my biggest issue with it. Which one? So we've talked before on the pod, John, about the 24-team football playoff and how we really don't care for that. Both of us would prefer it either stay at 12 or go to 16 than to go to 24. And now we're saying we don't like this idea of 76. And I don't think you and I don't just always say don't change anything. I mean, we were in favor of growing the football playoff back when it was 4 teams. And I think you're even in favor of growing it from 12 to 16. Just 24 is too many. I'm wondering, does one bother you more, though? A 76-team March Madness with all these play-in games, or a 24-team college football playoff? You don't like either one of them. Which one do you dislike more?
I think the traditionalist in me is coming out, but I think it's the 76-team NCAA tournament bothers me more because I've become so comfortable with that 64-team field, 68 now, but pre-play-in, that's my model.
Yeah.
That to me is what works best for the NCAA tournament. So don't give me these odd numbers. No, I'm not a big fan of the 24-team college football playoff. However, if it includes doing away with conference championship games, which have really become laughable, I would take it. I would accept that. There would at least be some reward, but I just can't get past that thing. To me, it's just all about that opening Thursday from noon to midnight in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That's what moves the needle with me.
Those first 2 days of the tournament, John, are my favorite 2 days on the sporting calendar. Everybody talks about the Super Bowl, the Masters. Love the Masters. Sunday on the Masters, of course. But man, I don't think anything tops those first 2 days. The first round. When you mentioned it, you got 4 games going at once usually from noon till midnight. Now one game might end and there's a little break before the next one starts, but there's a good chunk of the day where you can get 4 TVs set up if you want, or head to a sports bar, or however you do it. And you can have your head on a swivel watching 4 games at once for those first 2 days. I just love it, and I think that's the way a lot of people feel, and it's people that don't even necessarily watch a lot of college basketball during the season. You get to the tournament and they're locked in and they're rooting for their bracket, and they got $5 or $10 in their office pool, and they couldn't name 10 players in the tournament, but they're watching it because they love the bracket. They love the upsets. The anything can happen. I think you really got to be careful before you start messing around with that.
Yeah, I guess I kind of like Thanksgiving weekend in college football when everybody's still playing.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That one, and then Thursday and Friday in the NCAA tournament. Those are the best.
You're right about Thanksgiving week of college football, rivalry week. You usually get a couple of them on Thanksgiving Thursday, and then Black Friday is a really sneaky good day of college football, and then all the
Saturday.
Saturday's just chock full of great games. And we've talked before, that's where college football season peaks. It doesn't peak in the playoff. It peaks Thanksgiving week.
You got
Yeah.
everybody playing. I just love the idea of having all these games going on at the same time, and the scores are coming in, and you see possible upsets on the horizon, and it's just so enthralling. I wish the NCAA tournament wouldn't change, but they won't consult me. They won't consult you either, Blake.
They should. Maybe since we are ambassadors, aspiring ambassadors.
Yes, and consultants.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before we go, John, I'm wondering, I'm envisioning you watching that 12 hours of basketball, Thursday, Friday. I'm trying to picture it. You got a go-to snack during these games? You're more of a salty snack than a sweet snack guy, right? You could plow through a bag of Ruffles or Sun Chips, can't you? Do you got something that's your go-to during the tournament?
No, I went through a 12-step program years ago.
Oh, okay.
For a Ruffles potato chip addiction. Was successful. I don't eat Ruffles anymore. Then I went back to rehab for wheat thin and wheat Triscuit, 12-step programs. Got through them. Now I love mixed nuts.
Yeah.
And I am inclined to go into crackers, but the hard stuff I stay away from, because a bag of Ruffles, golly, I mean, can you imagine? As much as I like Ruffles potato chips, if you gave me 12 hours, I mean that's a 2-bag day.
Yeah. That first bag's not making it through the first session, is it?
No, let's not talk about that.
I mean, okay. Still a sore subject. I didn't know about that.
I need to stay away from that. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Endorphins are starting to populate there.
You might want to find a meeting. Enjoy the conference tournaments this week. We'll be back next week to discuss more March Madness. Thanks for listening to this basketball edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.